Chapter 14 Sean Knight in Shining Armor. The thought that something might be wrong briefly crossed Sean's mind in the morning, when he didn't receive Isaac's customary good morning text. It unsettled him even more when Isaac never responded to the one Sean sent. There wasn't any reason Sean could think of for Isaac to ghost him again, so during his break between a photoshoot and a fitting, he visited the bookstore. A flustered Olivia waved him down from customer service.
Sean.
Hello. Is Isaac here? No, I was going to ask you if you'd heard from him, she said. She bit her lip. He was supposed to open this morning but never showed up, and we can't get a hold of him.
Sean frowned.
He's not answering me either. No matter how annoyed he was at Sean, he wouldn't abandon his coworkers without a word. But Sean had walked him to his front door the previous night. He knew Isaac made it home safely. Had he gotten sick, perhaps? Maybe the Greek food didn't agree with him. If that were the case, he could still use his phone, though. Now I'm even more worried, Olivia said. I was hoping you would know at least. I wish I did. I'll check his apartment. Wait, let me give you my number, so you can keep me updated. She scrambled for the scrap paper, scratching out her number and handing it to Sean. He took the paper. I'll let you know as soon as I can. Turning, he strode out the doors. Worry gnawed at him, and on the short walk to the apartment Sean's imagination conjured up dozens of horrifying images of what he might find. Hands shaking, he knocked on Isaac's door. Isaac? It's Sean. There was no answer, but he could hear the TV, so he must be home. He knocked again. Come on, Isaac. On a whim, he tried the doorknob. It turned, and he pushed the door open. At least he wouldn't have to break it down. Kicking doors down wasn't one of his specialties. He'd never been inside Isaac's apartment before. With trying to keep their dates as public as possible, he declined offers to hang out inside and invited Isaac out instead. It was smaller than he expected, the kitchen almost overlapping the living room. All the flowers he'd given Isaac were spread out on every available surface in a variety of drinking glasses. He made a mental note to cut back on bouquets. The TV was on, the remote lying forgotten on the couch. Sean left it for now, crossing the living room to peek in the bedroom and bathroom. The bedroom was lined with bookshelves, and Sean would love to investigate those, but at another time. There was no boyfriend. Panic crawled up his spine, tightening around his throat. It didn't make sense. Unlocked door, TV on. Isaac should be here. He searched the tiny apartment again, but there was nowhere to hide. Taking deep breaths, he sat on the couch and tried calling Isaac one more time. Hey Sean, Isaac said. Sean wanted to cry with relief. Isaac. Thank God, I've been worried sick. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to worry you. Or everyone else. What sounded like cars drove by in the background. What happened? Where are you right now? I don't actually know. His fear skyrocketed again. Did someone kidnap you? Do you need help? Isaac let out a long sigh. No one kidnapped me, but I could use a ride if you're not busy. Sean had a fitting with his father in half an hour, but he couldn't care less. Of course, I'll be there as soon as I can. Send me the address. But Isaac, what happened? Your apartment was unlocked and the TV was on. Yeah. I left in a hurry last night. Last night? Isaac, are you okay? The answering silence did not make Sean feel better. He shut off the TV and raced out the door. I'll be fine, Isaac eventually said. Just, I'm really tired. Sean narrowed his eyes. True, Isaac sounded tired, voice lacking the enthusiasm Sean was used to. But that didn't explain why Isaac was who knew where, and why he'd ignored everyone all day. And he hadn't said he was okay, only that he would be. Isaac, be honest with me. Are you safe right now? Now, yes. I wasn't in a good headspace earlier, which is why wherever the hell I am. I wasn't paying attention when I started walking. Sean did not like the implications of that. He quickened his pace. Would it be faster if I sent an Uber to pick you up? No, please, I don't think I can handle strangers right now. Okay, I'm coming. I'll be at my car in another 10 minutes. He didn't know how long it would take to reach Isaac from there, but hopefully it wouldn't be too bad. Isaac's phone was about to die, but he texted the location and promised not to move while he waited for Sean. He was an hour and a half away. Sean frowned at the directions. Had Isaac really walked that far? It was a long, anxious drive. He called Olivia to update her, and after ignoring his father's first few calls, finally told Eric he was helping Isaac with an emergency. The minutes ticked by slowly. At last, he spotted Isaac curled up on a patio seat in front of a pizzeria, holding his knees to his chest and looking sad and miserable. Isaac perked up at the car pulling up in front of him, and he was out of the seat before Sean had the car off. Sean yanked the keys out of the ignition and jumped out, meeting Isaac halfway and crushing him in a hug. "You scared the out of me." Isaac leaned against him.
I'm sorry.
Sean ran his hand through greasy curls. "Just tell me what happened, please." Nodding, Isaac went back to his seat. Sean claimed the one across from him and reached out to take Isaac's hand. "One of the agencies that rejected me reached out, suddenly wanting to take on my book now that I'm all over the news. I was furious and went for a walk to clear my head and just never stopped walking." Sean turned to stone. If they only wanted to publish Isaac's book because of his connection to Sean. He squeezed Isaac's hand. "I'm so sorry. This was his fault. If he wasn't so selfish, Isaac would never be in this position. Even if he continued to send out his manuscript to other agencies, he'd never know which ones accepted him because they liked his book and which ones just wanted to ride the coattails of Sean and Isaac's fame. I'm trying to deal with all the attention and getting recognized by random strangers, but it's hard, and I hate that so many people have any opinion about us, and that I can't just ignore them like you do." Tears spilled over his cheeks. This was just the final straw, I guess. Sean had never hated himself more. He was having the best months of his life, and the person responsible for his happiness was suffering from it. If Isaac couldn't handle any more media attention, Sean wouldn't force him to. He wanted Isaac safe and happy, and if that meant he gave up his chance at freedom, so be it. "It sucks," Isaac went on, "because I want to be with you, I do, but this part of it is too much sometimes." "I'm sorry," Sean said. "I don't want you to be hurt by being with me. He swallowed, forcing himself to say the words. "If you don't want to see me anymore, I'd understand." Isaac cried harder, shaking his head. His grip on Sean's hand threatened to break bones.
No.
"That's the last thing I want. Please." Sean scooted his chair closer to Isaac to hug him, and Isaac clung to Sean's shirt, burying his face in Sean's shoulder. Sean tightened his arms around him. "I don't want that either, I promise, I just had to offer." Judging by the light smack Isaac gave him, he guessed the offer was not appreciated. He repeated apologies and words of comfort until Isaac settled down. "Can we go home?" Isaac asked. "Yeah, let's go." He helped Isaac into the car, and tried not to let the self-loathing devour him from the inside out. Chapter 15. To the beach. It had been 2 days since Isaac unexpectedly walked half a marathon to the next town over. Sean made him call out of work for the rest of the week, and they'd spent those 2 days watching movies in Isaac's apartment. Isaac expected more of the same today, but instead Sean walked into his apartment with his wide sunglasses and a plan. "We're going out today," he said. Brushing past Isaac, Sean invited himself into Isaac's bedroom and started pulling clothes out of the closet. "Okay. Where are we going?" Isaac asked. "That's a surprise, but it's going to be hot, and we might go swimming. Pack accordingly." Isaac blinked. "Okay." He only somewhat helped Sean pick out his favorite cargo shorts and a tank top, and while he changed, Sean helped himself to his bookshelves. The one dark green swimsuit he owned was packed in a bag with the books. Sean stole Isaac's college hat and plopped it on his head. "Ready, I guess." Nodding, Sean led him outside to a waiting car. It wasn't the Honda Civic he usually drove, but a bright cherry red Camaro. Isaac whistled. "And here I thought you were aiming for inconspicuous. This car is only for special occasions. I'm not seen in it very often. And today is a special occasion?" "Yep." He held the door open for Isaac and Isaac climbed in. He shut Isaac's door and rounded the front to his side. The car roared to life and Sean eased them into traffic. "Can I have a hint?" Isaac asked. "I gave you hints earlier. All you said was it would be hot and we might go swimming. It's late June, that means nothing." Sean grinned and shrugged his shoulders. "You'll see when we get there then." Isaac huffed and sank in the seat. "There is one thing I wanted to talk about before we get there though," Sean said, switching to a serious voice. Glancing over at him, Isaac sat up. "What's up?" "I want my PR team to take over your social media." Isaac blinked at him. Sean tightened his hand on the wheel and kept his gaze firmly on the road. "They've been monitoring already for any major red flags, but I want them to have total control. Then you don't have to worry about it, and they can deal with all the negative posts. You'll still be welcome to tweet about your writing, but you can also just send tweets to them, and they'll post it for you." "Oh," Isaac said. He turned the idea over in his mind. It would be nice to have professionals take over his meager attempts at building his social media, but he worried what they posted would come across as fake. Their responses would be scripted, and people tended to pick up on that kind of stuff. Handing over control also felt like giving up in a way. Like Sean didn't think he could handle his Twitter account. I just think you need a break from the online world, Sean said. He guided the car onto a highway, merging with the light mid-morning traffic. It's too intertwined with my career to avoid completely, so this seemed like a good compromise. Because Sean would always be famous. Even if he stopped modeling after the fall show, that fame wouldn't disappear overnight. Right. Sean glanced over at him. I thought you might be a little more excited to not deal with it anymore. Isaac shrugged. Just feels like I'm weak for not being able to handle it. You know? You're not weak, you're normal. I've never handled my own accounts. Most celebrities don't, and it's not because they don't have time. I thought it was for marketing, actually.
Sean snorted.
That too. Mainly it's because the insults don't bother the PR people as much since it's not about them. That makes sense, Isaac said. So you'll let my team take over? Sean asked. Isaac took a deep breath. Weak or not, it was probably best for his mental health if he agreed. Yes, they can take over. Sean spared a second to look over and smile at him. Thank you. Will you tell me where we're going now? Laughing, Sean refused again. He finally figured it out 2 hours later, when the highway narrowed to a bridge and he could see the ocean on the far side of the island. We're going to the beach? Isaac demanded. Sean laughed again and nodded. I really thought you'd figure it out sooner. We passed enough signs. Isaac had read those signs, but they hadn't clicked. I should have. I can't believe we're going to the beach. He couldn't believe he'd get to see Sean in swimming trunks, soaking wet in the ocean. Movies weren't cheering you up fast enough, I was getting impatient. Isaac laughed. No complaints here. Good, because for the rest of the day, nothing else matters. It's just you and me and the beach. Can't wait. Sean had managed to rent a beach house for the night, which Isaac thought was a little excessive, but he was grateful for the place to change all the same. He was even more grateful when Sean walked out in his navy blue trunks, shirtless. His body was carved with lean muscles, and Isaac wanted to run his hands over all of them. Then Sean held out a bottle of sunscreen and a silent question in his eyes, and Isaac felt like his soul ascended to the next world. Sean was perfectly capable of rubbing lotion over his own chest, but he didn't protest Isaac doing it. Next time you think of the rude people on Twitter, just remember none of them have ever been this close to me. Isaac let out a shaky laugh. Like I'm going to be able to think of anything besides this memory ever again. Sean grinned and Isaac wondered if that was also part of the goal for today. They spent the rest of the day on the beach, jumping through the waves and reading on the beach. Isaac laid with his head in Sean's lap while he read. The Midnight Library, allowed Sean's free hand running through Isaac's curls. Isaac looked up at him, content and happy in a way he hadn't been in a long time. And in that moment he knew. No matter how bad Twitter was or how much he hated the attention, he would fight through it all to stay with Sean. This man who was trying to do everything in his power to make Isaac happy, who went out of his way time and time again to prove Isaac meant the world to him. Things might still not work out in the long run, but the journey to get there would be worth it. Sean glanced at him, pausing his narration. What are you grinning at? I love you. Chapter 16. Sean deals with the L word.
Sean froze.
The same wild fear he felt the other day when Isaac was missing raced through his veins again. Isaac loved him? This shouldn't surprise him as much as it did. This was the point of dating. You didn't generally date people you didn't love or didn't think you could love. Unless you had an asshole for a father who twisted everything until it was broken and unrecognizable, like Sean did. Isaac was the one who wanted to take things slow though, and somehow Sean had fooled himself into believing deeper feelings like love wouldn't be an issue before the fall show. What a naive thought in hindsight. Also useless because almost a minute had passed and Sean needed to say something before Isaac started crying. But Sean's mind had blue-screened and all his thoughts were wordless screaming. You don't have to say it back if you're not ready. But I want you to know. I love you. Sean took a shaky breath. Licked his lips. He'd only meant for today help Isaac cheer up and get back on his feet. It wasn't supposed to turn into this. Isaac reached up to cup Sean's cheek. Hey, it's okay. Our own pace, remember.
Sean nodded.
He couldn't bring himself to say the words, or even determine if he felt the same way or not. He wasn't willing to ask that question when his father's deal still sat between them. That damn deal. He never should have agreed to it no matter how badly he wanted to be free. At least Isaac was happier. His smile came easier, and the light was back in his eyes that had been missing for days. That was the purpose of all this. Sean's feelings didn't matter. He was doing this for Isaac's sake. Granted, he hadn't figured out what would happen after the fall show. and that was likely to hurt Isaac worse than anything else Sean could ever do. But if Sean was going to tell Isaac about the deal, he should have done it sooner, when they first started dating. Now it was too late. The truth would break Isaac's heart, which was what Sean was trying to avoid. Anything he did seemed like it would break Isaac's heart. What was he supposed to do? "You've been reading for a while, how about I take over?" Isaac suggested, sitting up so they could trade positions and holding a hand out for the book. Sean followed along without a thought, mind still racing with everything else. He didn't know what to do, but Isaac's gentle voice washed over him and calmed him down. He had time to figure it out. There was a way for them both to be happy and honest, he just needed to think it over. But later. This had been such a perfect day. He didn't want to ruin it. So he forced himself to focus on Isaac's voice. Didn't let his mind wander when they finally ambled back to the beach house to clean up and order in cheap seafood. Allowed himself to enjoy cuddling Isaac on the couch after dinner while they watched a romantic comedy. And later, when they went to bed and Isaac shyly pulled him into his room to share a bed for the night, he mentally shut out the voices in his head telling him he was letting this go too far, that they were both going to be heartbroken after the fall show. He focused instead on the voice telling him that he wanted to sleep beside Isaac every night, and hold him like this all the time. Somehow, someway, Sean had to figure out a way not to lose Isaac entirely after the fall show. If he didn't do this right, Isaac wouldn't be afraid to cut him out of his life completely and leave everything behind. Isaac did it to his ex, he could just as easily do it to Sean. The thought of losing Isaac forever made Sean hold him a little tighter. Isaac's hand came up to rest over Sean's. "You okay?" "Yeah. Just thinking how much I don't want to lose you." "I don't want to lose you either. If we're in agreement, then I don't think we have anything to worry about." How simple and somehow exactly the words Sean needed to hear. "You're right. We're in this together." "Exactly. It's you and me." Sean smiled into Isaac's curls. "Was today a good idea?" "It was the best idea. Thank you for this, and for taking care of me the last few days." "Of course." They were quiet for a moment, and Sean almost started to drift off to sleep when Isaac spoke up. "We should do the animal sanctuary on the beach." Sean's heart skipped a beat, wide awake now. He'd all but forgotten that idea since he brought it up, and to hear Isaac bring it back like a real thing they were working towards together made his chest tighten. He still wasn't willing to ask himself if he returned Isaac's feelings. He thought he knew the answer anyway. "We'll have a private beach just for the dogs, it'll be great," Isaac said, beginning to outline fantastical daydreams about a beach sanctuary. Sean hit a snort at the doggy volleyball court in Isaac's neck, and countered with surfing lessons for the cats. Isaac's laugh was loud and unrestrained, exactly the way it should. Chapter 17. Isaac is found in his natural habitat. Isaac went back to work on cloud 9. Every time he thought of Sean, which was often, a smile would stretch over his face. Most of his doubts had been washed away on that beach, leaving a smooth calm behind to bask in the remaining joy and affection. The feeling lasted all of 2 hours before disappearing in someone's camera flash. Blinking spots out of his eye. He turned to see a teen girl giggling as she rounded a shelf out of sight. Unease bubbled in his gut, but he tried to ignore it and find that happy calm he had before. All throughout the rest of his shift, he felt like there were eyes on him. More teen girls came into the store than usual too, and he didn't miss the connection. They all kept looking at their phones and giggling, some of them making eye contact with him. He put a stack of reshelves on the customer service desk, eyeing a pack of girls suspiciously. Lawrence was at the desk, printing out the paperwork for a pickup order. "What's up? Have you noticed more high school girls than usual tonight?" Lawrence raised a brow. "Maybe. Didn't think anything of it though. Something going on." Isaac straightened his book pile. "I don't know. One of them took my picture earlier, so I guess I'm on edge." "They took your picture?" Lawrence repeated. "Are they allowed to do that?" Shrugging, he glanced over at the girls again. "I can't even be sure it was actually of me. Maybe she was taking a picture of the shelves behind me or something." Lawrence leveled a look at him. "Right. You dating the local supermodel in the tabloids every week, and they took a picture of the shelves behind you. Very believable." Isaac slumped his shoulders. "I can dream, can't I?" If all Sean's crazy fans had figured out where he worked, he didn't know what he'd do. Lawrence stepped past Isaac and pat his shoulder. There. I'm sure you'll get used to popularity eventually." He continued around the desk to deliver the order to the pickup location by the registers. "No, I won't," Isaac promised, eyeing the pack of girls again before resolutely ignoring them to put the reshelves away. The next day, one of the girls came up to him, biting her lip and clutching her phone. Hi. You're Isaac Green, right?" Isaac blinked. Yes. She squealed. Can I take a picture with you? He dropped the books he was holding. What? Please? No one will believe I met you without one. I don't think. I'll be super quick. She pleaded with her eyes biting her lip again. He still wasn't comfortable taking a picture with a stranger. He wasn't a celebrity like Sean. Why the girl even wanted a picture with him made no sense. I'd really prefer not to, Isaac said. Oh, come on, you're like a cryptid, no one knows anything about you. Please. He said no, Lawrence said, coming up behind him. Now, unless you want help finding a book, I suggest you move on. The girl pouted, but Lawrence's unimpressed stare didn't waver and she finally left. Isaac took a breath. Thank you. Lawrence bent down to pick up the books Isaac dropped. Always happy to tell customers to get lost. He stood up and passed the books to Isaac. But you might want to learn how to do it yourself. I won't always be here. Yeah, I'll work on that, Isaac promised. He'd ask Sean for tips. He ended up getting chances to practice throughout the rest of the day, when several girls he recognized from the day before came back trying to take selfies with him. Lawrence had passed the word around to the rest of the staff, and his co-workers kept an eye on him and were able to swoop in to his rescue each time. They took a certain amount of pleasure in telling off the customers. The only girl who succeeded in getting a picture with him was the one who didn't ask permission first, but simply ran up to him, looped an arm around his neck, and snapped the photo before scurrying off. Well, that can't be good, Isaac muttered to himself, rubbing his neck. He almost pulled out his phone to check Twitter. Ever since he'd handed his account over to Sean's PR team, he hadn't looked at the app. It was part of why he'd been able to stay happy for so long after the beach, and he was loath to log back into the app. Instead he texted Sean. Any tips for how to tell people you don't want your picture taken? Sean didn't text back right away. Busy with a 4th of July photo shoot promoting a summer collection. That was fine, Isaac was still on the clock. He ended up trading spots with the barista in cafe so he'd have a physical barrier between himself and the girls, which helped him feel a little better, until he saw them taking pictures from their tables. A businessman pulled out his phone waiting for his drink, and Isaac almost snapped at him before realizing he probably wasn't trying to take a photo. His nerves were on edge the rest of the night, and he had to recount the deposit 3 times because he kept losing count. By the time he locked the front doors and started heading home, he had a missed call from Sean and an answering text. Who's trying to take your picture? Isaac called him back while he walked.
Isaac se han gritted.
Have you been on Twitter? His heart plummeted. No, not since the beach. Do I want to know?
Se han hammed.
Probably not. My team is trying to keep up with it, but it sounds like enough people saw the first one before they got to it. Saw what? Isaac asked, fearing the answer. Are you sure? I had 6 girls trying to take pictures with me at work today.
Se han said.
I was afraid of that. You're a regular person to them, so they think you're approachable. How'd they even find me? Isaac demanded. The first one was luck, Sean said. A customer happened to recognize you. I'm not sure if you saw her. You weren't facing the camera. Isaac thought of the first camera flash and the girl who disappeared right after. She posted the picture and tagged the location, which drew everyone else like sharks to blood. Great, Isaac muttered. He rubbed his forehead. So now what? The team took the first picture down, and they're taking down as many new ones as they find. Problem is they aren't all tagged properly, so if others recognize the store around you, they can figure it out that way. Isaac took a deep breath. Okay, I guess I'll just work in the back for a few days. It'll blow over, right? It should, and the team is going to post something from my account tomorrow asking to respect your privacy, which should help. Okay. Isaac took another deep breath. Okay. I'm really sorry about this, Sean said. I feel like every time we turn around, I'm ruining your life all over again. This isn't your fault, Isaac said. I'm not happy they found out where I work, but we'll deal with it. Is there anything else I can do? Sean asked. Be less famous? Soon. Hold out until the fall show. I'll try. He went to bed that night strategizing how to avoid the attention in his store, and he walked to work the next day determined to hold his ground. His determination crumbled when a journalist waiting outside the store spotted him and jumped in his path. Isaac Green, I'm with Pop News. Can you spare a few minutes to answer some questions? Nosy teen girls were one thing. They'd lose interest after a week when the next trend hit Twitter. Journalists, they wouldn't go away. He'd seen how persistent they were chasing Sean around, and he didn't have the experience or grace Sean had for dealing with them. Isaac chose not to answer the journalist, running inside the store to the safety of the break room. He couldn't keep working here if this was what it was going to be like. He had to quit. Chapter 18. Sean would like one good day, please. You what? Sean repeated, shooting up on his couch. He tossed his book aside without marking his place. I quit, Isaac repeated. Journalists and paparazzi showed up, and I can't deal with them the way you can. Sean dragged a hand through his hair. His leg bounced with his nervous energy. God, Isaac, I'm so sorry. He was saying that a lot anymore. How could Isaac possibly love him when he kept screwing everything up? Once things settle down, I might be able to go back, Isaac said. He didn't sound hopeful about it. But what will you do before then? Sean asked. He'd seen Isaac's apartment. His boyfriend didn't exactly have spare cash lying around. I don't know, Isaac said. I'll be okay for a month, maybe 2 if I sell some of my stuff and ask Mom. Sean drew a line there. He would not force his boyfriend to sell his things just to keep a roof over his head, not when money had never been an object to him. No, Isaac, listen, this is my fault. I'll cover your rent for as long as you need. I can't ask that of you, Isaac said. I'll use a company card. They won't even notice an extra $2,000 charge. What do you mean they wouldn't notice? Don't they have audits? And how much do you think I pay for a 1-bedroom apartment? You really think I have any idea what an apartment cost? Sean asked. I'll call it a marketing charge or something. The auditors won't even blink. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome, Sean said. What else will you need? I can send groceries too. No, you're doing enough, I promise. It didn't feel like enough. Sean stood and started pacing around the coffee table. Do you want me to come over? I'd feel better if you weren't alone right now. Less chance of Isaac walking to the next county that way. I've got nowhere to be, so feel free, Isaac said. I'll be right over. An extra bonus for Sean, he got out of his own house. His father worked late more nights than not, ironing out details for his designs and preparing for the fashion show. It meant Sean saw him less, which was always good. But it also meant the empty rooms crushed him with loneliness. Sean stopped to pick up a pizza along the way to Isaac's. When he arrived, the apartment looked the same as it always did. He didn't know why he'd expected it to be different after only one day, but something as momentous as losing a job felt like it should have a physical impact. Oh, you didn't have to get pizza, Isaac said when he opened the door. I was in the mood for it, Sean lied. It helped Isaac to settle though if he thought Sean did it for himself, and Sean didn't mind a few white lies if it helped someone else. I'll get some drinks. Water for you? Isaac asked. Yes, please. Go ahead and pick out a movie. Isaac waved to the TV and stepped into the kitchen. Setting the pizza down on the coffee table, Sean flipped through Netflix until settling on an old Sherlock Holmes movie. Isaac came back in with plates and 2 cups, setting them down on the coffee table. Once they both had their pizza, he tucked himself into Sean's side. The movie started playing and Sean watched Isaac as much as the film. His boyfriend looked tired, but right now he was relaxed and content. Sean still needed to work out the details of taking over Isaac's rent. He would prefer sending Isaac the money directly, so he could send extra for Isaac to cover any other bills, but that could wait for another day. For now, helping Isaac calm down and get his head back on straight was his priority. They finished Sherlock Holmes and moved on to a new movie, settling more into the couch. Sean played with Isaac's curls, letting himself believe that things would be okay. This summer would be rough, but once he was out of modeling, things would settle down. He'd fade into anonymity, and they could run off together somewhere and be happy. A knock on Isaac's door startled them. Isaac frowned and glared at the door. I swear, if a reporter found my apartment too, I will find a way to destroy the internet. Is it better or worse if I answer? Sean offered. Probably worse, Isaac groaned, dragging himself off the couch. Isaac took a moment to compose himself in front of the door before opening it. He kept his body behind the door, only barely peeking into a small gap to see who it was. All at once Isaac straightened, opening the door a little wider. What the hell are you doing here, Beck? A tall buff blonde rubbed the back of his head. Hey Isaac. Been a while. Chapter 19. Isaac's unwanted guest. Beck was in his doorway. Beck. In his doorway. Standing there like he belonged there or anywhere in the same city as Isaac. Surprise gave way to anger, and Isaac slammed the door shut in Beck's face. Immediately Beck started knocking. Come on Isaac, please. I'm worried about you. You gave up that right. Isaac yelled back through the door. His hands were shaking. He didn't know if he wanted to punch something or cry. It was the worst mistake of my life, Isaac. Please, will you just talk to me? Sean put a hand on Isaac's shoulder. Do you want me to call the police to get rid of him? He asked. Isaac grimaced. Tempting, but he didn't want to deal with the police. He should be able to get through to Beck. Once upon a time he was the only person who could. Even Beck's parents struggled with Beck's stubbornness and temper. But Isaac could give Beck a look and Beck would cave instantly. Steeling himself, he cracked open the door again. I have nothing to say to you, and I think you should leave. Then don't talk, just listen to me, Beck pleaded. For our family's sake? Isaac narrowed his eyes. That was a low blow. Their mothers had been roommates in college and stayed best friends after graduation, and he and Beck had been raised together. They were barely ever apart as kids, having sleepovers every other day. They'd done everything together. When they reached high school and hit puberty, their friendship deepened to romantic levels. They'd been the power couple of their school, the one couple everyone expected to last forever. So sure of the strength of their relationship, they'd gone to different colleges. Beck always swore distance wouldn't change anything between them, and for the first 3 years it hadn't. They took turns visiting each other every weekend, until senior year. Beck had a big internship that year that kept him busy on weekends, and they couldn't see each other as much. But they still texted all the time and called each other every night. Their graduations were set for the same day, so Isaac went to visit Beck a few days earlier, when classes were officially done. He found Beck with someone else in his bed. His eyes had met Beck's, and then Isaac had run. While Beck scrambled into pants to chase after him, Isaac got in his car and drove until he was out of gas and parked on the side of the road. He'd screamed and cried, punched his steering wheel, threw his phone out the window when it wouldn't stop ringing. His whole world had shattered that night. He cried himself to sleep, waking up the next morning to a police officer tapping on his window. They called a tow truck for his car and escorted him home, and he didn't leave his room for a week except to use the bathroom. The only saving grace was that he hadn't had to tell anyone what Beck did. Beck had called everyone in both of their families hoping Isaac had reached out to them, and he'd admitted his own sin in the process. Isaac wasn't sure he would have been able to tell anyone. Beck had given him a week before attempting to apologize. Isaac remembered yelling and throwing things and not much else of that conversation. The thought of Beck trying to talk to him again prompted Isaac to move to his college town and accept a full-time position at Barnes & Noble, which had never been his plan. But it was what he'd needed at the time, and he'd been here ever since. Now Beck had followed him even here. Beck shifted in the doorway, glancing up and down the hall. Can I come in? I don't want your neighbors overhearing. Isaac didn't want that either, but he also didn't want Beck in his apartment. Between the two, the latter was the lesser of two evils. He opened the door and stepped back. Beck stepped in and shut the door, pausing at the sight of Sean. His face twisted. Can we do this privately? Isaac drew the line there. No way. You're lucky I even let you in. Fine. Beck ran a hand over his hair again. First, I want to apologize again. What, you think saying sorry makes this all better? Isaac demanded. The old wounds in his heart were tearing open again, and his fingers itched for something to throw. I know it's not enough, Beck snapped. But I have to start somewhere, right? I've been giving you space but you still won't have anything to do with me, and now you're going through all this junk. I want to help you if I can. Isaac reached for Sean's hand, the next best thing to reaching for something to throw. What makes you think I need or want your help? Beck threw his hands up. I'm trying to offer a freaking olive branch to start fixing things. It's not your decision, Sean said. You can't make someone forgive you. Stay out of this, pretty boy, Beck snapped. You have no idea of the history between us. Sean tightened his grip on Isaac's hand and pulled Isaac back. I know that he's terrified of being hurt again, and that's on you. Beck winced and glared at the living room. That's what I'm trying to fix. If I wanted you to fix it, Isaac said quietly, I would have come home. So our bond means nothing to you? You're willing to give up 22 years of friendship because of one night? Isaac closed his eyes, tears building. I could ask you the same thing. 22 years and I wasn't enough for you. His voice cracked. It was like the last 2 years hadn't happened at all, like he was walking into Beck's dorm all over again. All the hurt and betrayal and anger bled like a brand new wound. You were always enough, Beck said. Isaac snapped. Then why was Kyle Maclay in your bed? Sean pulled him back again, angling himself between Isaac and Beck. I think you should go. Like hell, you can't tell me what to do. You're upsetting him. Leave. Isaac wiped his eyes. He didn't want to cry any more tears over this. No, I'm not leaving things like this anymore. I know I can make him come around, Beck said. You can't force him to forgive you, Sean repeated, voice lined with steel. Isaac had never heard it like that before. No one asked you so, but out. Isaac recognized the flame in Beck's eye. He'd seen it enough before Beck got in a fight at school. If Isaac didn't calm him down, things were going to get ugly. Turned out he was focused on the wrong person. Sean's fist cracked against Beck. Chapter 20 Violence solved nothing. Sean honestly couldn't see what Isaac had ever liked about Beck. The man was pushy and temperamental. Punching him felt good. For 30 seconds after Sean punched him, none of them moved. His hand hurt way more than he'd expected it to, but it was worth it. "Oh God," Isaac muttered. "I'll get an ice pack." He disappeared into the kitchen behind Sean. Beck worked his jaw. "That's how you want it? Fine." He threw a wide right hook. The closest thing to a fight Sean had ever been in was that day a mugger grabbed him, and that hadn't even been a fight. He was not prepared for Beck to come after him. Isaac's tiny apartment worked in his favor though. There wasn't room for a real fight, and after only a few jabs they tripped and grappled on the floor. "Hey!" Isaac yelled. "Knock it off." Beck's elbow jammed itself under Sean's ribs. Sean retaliated with a knee in Beck's kidney. "Beck!"
Sean.
They rolled into the coffee table. A cup tipped over and spilled water over the edge. "He started it," Beck growled. His hand slapped Sean's face and pushed him into the floor. "Get off him," Isaac demanded. "Beckett Malcolm fire." Isaac stomped his foot. A long sigh, and then Beck's hand lifted from Sean's face, and Isaac dragged Beck off. Kneeling between the two, Isaac glared at both of them. "The next person who throws a punch gets this bag of peas down their pants." He shook the frozen vegetables for emphasis. Sean sat up, wiping the back of his hand under his nose. There wasn't any blood, but it was tender. He was pretty sure Beck headbutt him at some point. "Got it?" Isaac asked. "Got it," Beck growled. He sat on his heels and folded his arms across his chest. "Yes. I apologize for losing my temper," Sean said. The apology was for Isaac's benefit. In Beck's case, he wished he'd hit him harder. Isaac eyed him. "That wasn't like you." No, it wasn't. All his life he'd been the stoic, well-behaved child. The one who followed orders and didn't cause trouble. Even the night of his accident, he'd barely been buzzed after a gala, and he'd only rear-end someone at a stop sign. But that didn't make as good a headline. It was considered his teenage rebellion, the first sign he was going to snap under the pressure. His father seized the chance to force him into a conservatorship and control him even longer. Was he finally snapping the way his brother had? Was all the pressure and guilt too much for him? "Why am I not surprised?" "Your punch was weak," Beck stated. Sean glared at him. "Not helping," Isaac bit out. "I can't believe you actually like this weak loser," Beck muttered. Isaac held up the frozen peas. "Behave. I'm not afraid to use this." "Seriously, what does he have that I don't?" "Money. Good looks. You were never that shallow. And you always hated attention, so what is going on? Are you even actually dating? Or is this some kind of publicity stunt for him?" Sean wished he wasn't so close to the truth. Their relationship balanced on a thin line between genuine and staged, depending on who told the narrative. It was like his accident all over again. "What are you talking about?" Isaac asked. "Of course this isn't a publicity stunt." "Then why are you all over the internet? I've never seen a celebrity couple get as much attention as you do." The tips of Isaac's ears reddened. "Sean is popular and I'm a mystery boyfriend," Isaac said. "They're curious because they don't know who I am." Beck snorted. "Yeah, right. No one shows up in the tabloids that often without planning it." Isaac threw the bag of peas at Beck. "It's not a publicity stunt." Beck caught the peas. "Then why isn't he saying anything?" Their eyes turned to him and Sean couldn't move. He couldn't even breathe. "Tell him he's crazy, Sean. This is just how it is for celebrities," Isaac said. Oh, he wanted those words to spill out of his mouth so badly. Wanted to reassure Isaac and rub it in Beck's face that the two of them dating was honest and strong. The words wouldn't come. "Oh my God," Beck whispered. "You son of a bitch, this is a publicity stunt, isn't it? And you never told him." "It's not like that," Sean said, which wasn't a denial. Isaac's face crumpled. "You were using me?" This was not how Sean had wanted Isaac to find out. He'd wanted to bring it up gently, after his freedom was assured, when he could promise never to drag Isaac in front of cameras again. Tears ran down Isaac's face. "Was any of it real? Did you mean a single word of what you said to me?" "Of course it was real. That was why you couldn't say you loved me at the beach," Isaac barreled on. "This whole thing has been, what, free marketing for you?"
No, Isaac, listen.
And after everything I told you, Isaac yelled. He was on his feet now, chest heaving as he held back sobs. I told you how scared I was of being hurt, and you still used me? Sean jumped to his feet, reaching out a hand to grab Isaac's arm. Let me explain. Isaac twisted away. Explain what? That I meant nothing to you. You mean everything to me, Sean insisted. I don't believe you. Please believe that if nothing else. I really didn't want to hurt you, I was going to tell you somehow. Get out. Isaac shut his eyes and took deep breaths. Isaac, please, Sean started. You hurt him, Beck said, looking far too smug. Isaac rounded on him. You can get out too. I don't want either of you near me right now. You shouldn't be alone, Sean tried. Out. Isaac yelled, pointing out the door. Both of you get out. Isaac, Beck said. Either you two get out or I will. Isaac threatened. Neither of them argued. The last thing they wanted was Isaac getting lost on another walk. The door slamming behind him was the second worst sound in Sean's life, beaten only by the sound of Isaac crying alone on the other side. Chapter 21. Isaac is forced to face his problems. Okay, get dressed, Olivia stated, walking into her living room with her hands on her hips. Isaac paused Angry Birds on his phone. Why? We are going out to lunch, because you can't avoid the outside world forever. He winced, glancing out her patio door in distaste. After Beck showed up at his apartment and the truth about Sean came out last week, and after Isaac spent the night crying, he'd asked Olivia if he could crash on her couch for a while. Beck and Sean couldn't find him here. He had not been outside since. Couldn't risk bumping into one of them on the street, or God forbid one of Sean's fans. Come on, I'm not letting you mope anymore. Olivia tapped her foot. With a heavy sigh, he got up and dug out some clothes from his duffel bag and stepped into the bathroom to change. Staying with Olivia was only a temporary measure, but he didn't know what his next step would be. With no job, he had no reason to stay in town anymore. It would probably be better for him to leave, start over where no one knew him. Well, hopefully no one knew him. There had to be a town out there that didn't care about Sean Winters. Maybe he'd start doing research after lunch. Once his shoes were on, Olivia dragged him out the door. Have you been to the little cafe on Main Street? They have the best sandwiches there. Shaking his head, he let her ramble about the menu. She pulled him along, maintaining the one-sided conversation, until opening the door to the little cafe. Brick walls and wood floors gave the place a rustic feel, and it smelled like coffee and sugar. There was a decent lunch crowd, but they didn't have a long wait before giving their order and picking a table to wait at. Olivia played with her wallet, eyes glancing at the door every time someone came in. Are you expecting anyone else? Isaac asked. Maybe she'd invited another coworker. Yes, actually. We're early, but I don't know if he'll arrive early too. Who is it? Their order was called, and Olivia jumped up to grab it and avoid answering Isaac's question. Why did he get the feeling he didn't want to see whoever she was expecting? Here we go, Olivia said, setting a ham and cheese melted sandwich and iced chai in front of Isaac. She had a turkey chipotle sandwich and hot caramel latte. It looks delicious. Dig in. She took a huge bite, continuing to evade Isaac's question. He definitely didn't want to see whoever was coming. Sighing, he pulled the iced chai closer. Olivia, why are you doing this? She swallowed and put her sandwich down, lowering her gaze to her plate. You're more than welcome to stay on my couch, and I'll support you as much as I can, but you need more than just me. There are people who care about you, if you stop running away and let them. His spine stiffened. You didn't. She shrugged apologetically, eyes darting to the door. He came into the store and made a convincing argument. And we both know you can't live on my couch forever. A man approached their table, hands shoved in their jean pockets. I'll give you time to talk, Olivia said, taking her plate and latte and abandoning Isaac. Isaac shut his eyes as Beck slid into Olivia's vacated seat. I don't want to do this. I know, Beck said, but I need to apologize for last week, and I'm still trying to make up for everything else. Isaac sank in his chair, crossing his arms and glaring at the brick wall. You know what's amazing? Everyone thinks I'm the stubborn one. They've never seen you hold a grudge. Learned from you, Isaac retorted. Beck cracked a smile. Yeah, probably. Isaac did not smile. Beck's grin fell. He rubbed the back of his head. All right. I am sorry for last week. I shouldn't have fought your boyfriend like that, even if he did throw the first punch. And I'm sorry he turned out to be trash. I might not have liked him on principle, but I still wanted him to be good for you. Sean's betrayal was still too fresh. Isaac was going to start crying all over again. Please don't talk about him. Beck stared at him. Sure. Isaac sipped his chai. What will it take to make you go away? Not happening, Beck declared. I love you too much to let you go this easily. Isaac shut his eyes and tilted his head back. He never should have let Olivia drag him here. Don't say that either. What? I love you. You know I do. I always have. Anger sparked in Isaac's gut, weak with his exhaustion, but enough to have him glaring at Beck again. Kyle Maclay. A mistake that will never happen again, Beck swore. I could explain every stupid thought that made me think it was a good idea, but I don't think you want to hear them. Part of Isaac was curious, but in the end it didn't matter what Beck had been thinking. It didn't change anything. You're right. Beck played with the strap of his watch. I learned my lesson, okay? I will never do something that dumb again. You can hold it over me for the rest of our lives. Just please. He took a deep breath and looked Isaac in the eye. Give me a second. Chapter 22. Sean goes out of town. Sean had never claimed to be a nice person. The week after Isaac kicked him out, he would even go so far as to say he was downright unbearable. He tried to keep himself locked in the home gym, the intense workouts the only thing that would thoroughly distract him. But he did have to emerge for work and food. The photographers were fed up with his performance. He wasn't able to sink into the pliable headspace needed for the poses, and he had little patience for their whims. He even snapped at Luna while she practiced the makeup designs for the different pieces in the collection. The worst, though, was Hannah, the PR manager, catching him after a disaster of a photoshoot and stopping him in the hall. Sean, just wanted to check in. You and Isaac haven't made any appearances in 2 weeks. He dragged a hand over his face. His irritation was already high after being played with like a doll by the photographer. This was the last thing he needed. Media moves fast, Hannah went on. We'll be forgotten if you don't get back out there. Right. Because all that mattered to them was the publicity, not the people involved or the lives ruined by it. I don't want to have to bring this up with your father, but you had a deal. She just had to mention his father. He slammed the side of his fist against the wall. Shut up. I blew it, okay? The deal is broken. Isaac doesn't want to see me. So just shut up and leave me alone. Turning on his heel, he stormed off and left her there, mouth hanging open. The shame hit him as soon as he got in his Honda. She was only doing her job. Swearing, he leaned his forehead on the steering wheel. This was such a disaster. His temper was shorter and shorter every day, and he didn't know what he'd do if his father tried to bring it up with him. He needed to talk to someone and get all these thoughts out of his head. Normally that person was Luna, but she always played peacekeeper between him and his father, and he didn't want that right now. He wanted someone to be just as angry at their father. He turned the key. His brother Nick was always ready to rant about their old man. It was a 2-hour drive to Nick's apartment, and he had to wait outside the door for another hour until Nick came back from classes.
Sean?
What are you doing here? Nick was taller than Sean, but they had the same dark hair. Nick had inherited 2 gray eyes from their mother, instead of one of each like Sean had. I needed to talk to someone. Can I come in? He stood and brushed his pants off. Yeah, of course. Nick unlocked the door and led the way inside, dropping his backpack next to the door. Out of the 4 of them, Nick had been the only one smart enough to stay away from the fashion world and was in med school for pediatrics. Because of his distance, Sean had barely seen him in the last 10 years, and when he did they didn't talk much. Do you want anything? Water, Sean said. Nodding, Nick fetched him a glass. So what's up? That was all the permission Sean needed to launch into a rant. It wasn't just about the deal this summer, but also about being under conservatorship in the first place, being unable to move out of the house like his siblings had. He understood, of course. Living with their father was stifling and made him want to tear his hair out, and as kids it had been worse. Their opinions never mattered. They had to fight for everything they wanted, even things as simple as pizza for dinner. They'd grown up in alternating patches of silence and shouting matches. It was a glorified cage in Sean's mind, one he'd be in for the rest of his life. Nick started making spaghetti while Sean talked, only interrupting to clarify something or exclaim in the appropriate outrage. Sean finished with his head in his hands, hunched over the table. I was so sure I'd be free this fall, and now that I won't be I feel like I'm losing my mind. I'm going to snap just like Tyler did, aren't I? Nick dished out 2 plates of spaghetti. Tyler snapped because he was trying to be a world-class designer, while still in high school, and dealing with Mom's death on top of it all. He set the plates on the table and brought over the saucepan. He also took issue with Dad focusing on you, and your modeling career and ignoring him. He could have had Dad's attention, Sean grumbled. I never wanted it. Wasn't up to us, Nick said. Dad's responsible for his own failings. Sean shrugged and spooned sauce onto his spaghetti. What happened to Tyler anyway? Everyone always changed the subject whenever I asked. Eventually he'd stopped asking. Nick looked down at his plate. Do you want to go see him? He's alive. Well, of course he's alive. You really think we would have kept that from you? You would barely have anything to do with me. And Luna cried whenever I mentioned him. What was I supposed to think? Nick rolled his eyes to the ceiling and shook his head. That settles it. Eat your spaghetti, we'll go see him after dinner. No wonder you never visited.
Sean blinked incredulously.
Was it supposed to be his fault that no one told him anything? Shaking his head, Sean twirled spaghetti onto his fork. Why was his family so dysfunctional? Chapter 23. You have to be joking. Give me a second chance? If Isaac had been drinking anything, he would have done a spit take. You have to be joking. He'd avoided Beck for 2 years, blocked his number and all social media, barely even spoke to Beck's parents, and Beck seriously thought Isaac would date him again? Especially after the disaster his last relationship turned out to be? Beck winced. Are you honestly telling me you don't feel anything for me? Oh, I feel plenty of things. Anger, betrayal, sadness. I've never had a problem with my emotions, that was your thing. Isaac was the crier, the one who wore his heart on his sleeve. Beck was the strong, confident one who punched whatever made Isaac cry. Feelings were a foreign concept to Beck most of the time. Then admit you still love me, Beck insisted, leaning over the table. What we had doesn't just go away. Isaac raised a brow. No, it doesn't. Are you forgetting it's been 2 years? He picked up his sandwich, now cold, and took a bite. It had taken a lot of work for Isaac to reach this point where he could even be in the same room as Beck. I am painfully aware of how long you've been avoiding me, Beck said. But we were together much longer than that. You can't tell me you let go of everything we had just like that. Isaac shrugged. Everything we had doesn't matter after what you did. You don't mean that. Beck's voice trembled. We promised each other we'd be there forever. Sighing, Isaac put his sandwich back down. He picked at the melted cheese dribbling down the sides. I'm not the one who broke that promise, Beck. It was one mistake. We can move past that. You want me to just forget the fact you slept with another man? He didn't mean anything to me. I haven't even seen him since graduation. Goody for you, Isaac spat. I still can't trust you again. Beck's face crumpled. He wasn't one to cry easily, but he looked close to tears now. Isaac, please. You know me better than anyone else. Yeah, and I still never expected you to cheat on me. I've never been in that much pain before. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me, Beck promised.
No, Beck.
I can't go through that again. It almost destroyed me. I swear it will never happen again. You swore it wouldn't happen at all, Isaac reminded him. He wrapped his fingers in his shirt collar. It hurt, Beck. You were the one person who was never supposed to hurt me like that, the one person I could always rely on. Seeing you with Kyle Maclay, knowing that in the end I wasn't good enough for you. He bit his lip, holding back more tears. I almost caused an accident that night, you know? Beck sucked in a breath. Isaac looked down at his plate, appetite long gone. He couldn't bring himself to go into any more detail, but he didn't have to. The distraught look on Beck's face said he understood what Isaac couldn't say. Isaac. I shouldn't have been driving that night. It was a good thing when I ran out of gas, for me and everyone else on the road. Jesus, Isaac, Beck said. That's why I can't do it again, Beck, Isaac went on. If I let myself trust you again, and you break that trust, I won't survive it. What happened with Sean was bad enough, but Isaac had always doubted their relationship would last. Even when he realized he loved Sean, it was with the knowledge that he was probably diving into another broken heart. So as painful as it was, he wasn't near that dark edge again. He was hurt and disappointed, and didn't think he'd ever bring himself to date again, but he'd live. He'd leave town and find another bookstore, somewhere far, far away from Sean and Beck and all of this pain, but he'd live. Please, Isaac, my life isn't the same without you. I miss you, Beck said. I'm sorry, Beck. I can't do it. He picked up his chai and stood from the table. I won't date you or anyone else, not when it's this painful. Wait, Isaac. Say hi to your parents for me, Isaac said, turning towards the door. He saw Olivia stand from her table, concern all over her face. She'd probably overheard their entire conversation, and he couldn't decide if he cared or not. He'd be out of town soon enough anyway, so he decided he didn't. And then he walked out the door, ignoring both Beck and Olivia calling after him. Chapter 24. Sean's cryptic brother. Sean felt the way Isaac must have when he whisked Isaac away to the beach. He climbed into Nick's blue SUV with no idea where they were going, and Nick refused to tell him. He jumped when Nick started the car and music blasted through the speakers. Apologizing, Nick lowered it to a more reasonable level. "Why won't you tell me where we're going again?" Sean asked. He didn't care much for being on this side of the surprise. At least bringing Isaac to a beach had been something fun, and he'd given Isaac hints beforehand. "Honestly, I don't know what you'll think of where he is, and I don't want you backing out before we get there." "I won't back out." "You say that now, but if you have time to think about it, you might." Sean tapped a finger on the armrest. "Do you really think being cryptic helps?" Nick sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "No, sorry, I'm not trying to be. Tyler is a sensitive topic for me. I've been his main outside support. I'm a little protective of him." "Outside support? Is he locked away somewhere? Had Tyler gone to prison when he snapped? Is that why no one talked about it?" "Something like that," Nick mumbled. "I really want him to be the one to tell you everything. It'll be good for both of you, I think." The curiosity burned, but if Nick wasn't going to give him straight answers, Sean didn't want to waste his time asking. "Is he happy wherever he is?" Nick grimaced. "In some ways yes, in others not so much. He's glad to be away from Dad, and being away from the fashion world and media spotlight has been good for him, but he'd rather not be where he is, you know." When Sean thought of his brother, he thought of the children's fashion he'd been designing. It was one of the only things Tyler had ever talked about. He'd used Sean as a living mannequin, and Luna covered his face in makeup, and he'd strut around the living room like it was a catwalk while they cheered. Back then, Nick and their mother would play judge, giving and deducting imaginary points. His memories of Tyler were so wrapped up in fashion, he didn't know how to separate the two. Who was his brother if he wasn't a fashion designer? "Guess I should warn you about some things," Nick admitted 20 minutes into the drive. "He's pretty okay with most topics, but don't ask anything about the fashion world or his old designs. Those still upset him. I know we're going to be talking about Dad, but try and let him lead the conversation. If he tells you to drop a subject, drop it." Sean nodded, soaking in the information. "Does he know about the conservatorship?" Nick's face twisted, and he tapped against the steering wheel. "Yeah, he knows. He was pissed when it happened. I don't know how he'll react to it now." He nodded again, watching the trees go by on the side of the road. "You make it sound like he'll be violent." The answering grimace did not reassure him. "It's not out of the realm of possibility." Sean took a moment to think about it. "If he messes up my face, you're explaining what happened to Dad. Not that he particularly cared if he had a black eye or not. Makeup could cover any bruises he might acquire, and he'd been using it all week on his forehead from Beck headbutting him. His father, however, would complain about it until the bruise faded, and Sean wasn't willing to go through another lecture about protecting his assets so soon." Nick groaned. "Don't make me talk to him. I haven't spoken to our old man since Christmas. It's been wonderful." "Then don't let Tyler mess up my face." "Fine, fine, no harm will come to your $1,000,000 face. I'm not making any promises about the rest of you. My hairstylist will kill you if anything happens to my hair," Sean mentioned. Nick rubbed his temple. "Why are you like this?" "Childhood trauma, probably." Nick let out a quick, surprised laugh. "Ain't that the truth? Anyway, back to Tyler. It's been a few years since he lashed out, so I wouldn't worry too much. It's just, I'm sure we'll be bringing up some sensitive topics." Sean frowned and picked at a crack in the leather armchair. "Would it be better not to go?" "Nah, he's wanted to see you for years. I didn't realize you had no idea where he was, or I swear I would have dragged you there sooner. I thought you didn't want to see him. We were never all that close, and after the first few years I was used to him being gone. Of course, he'd never been close with any of his siblings. Being the youngest meant he hadn't seen much of them when they were younger, and then Tyler was sent away and everything broke between them." Nick blamed their father in the fashion world, and refused to have anything to do with it. He detested Sean's modeling career, and distanced himself as much as he could until moving out for college. Luna had done her best to keep everyone happy, but Nick and their father had butted heads on everything and had been determined not to get along. She and Sean were okay. He just hadn't seen her much between his job and hers. Talking to Luna about Isaac these last few months was the most sibling bonding he'd done in years. As for Nick, this was the most meaningful conversation he'd had with him ever. "Makes sense. We'll just have to fix that now," Nick said. "Are we almost there?" Sean asked. They'd already been in the car for half an hour, and he still had a 2-hour drive home tonight. About 10 minutes, Nick answered. If you need to spend the night, you can sleep on my couch. Sean eyed the setting sun. We'll see. After all Nick's cryptic statements and warnings, he had little idea of what to expect, and did what he could to mentally prepare. Chapter 25. An unexpected question. Isaac was almost around the corner before he heard Beck chasing after him. Truthfully, he was surprised Beck even let him get out of the cafe. When he'd first stood up, he'd expected Beck to mirror him and grab him before he took a single step. When Beck hadn't, Isaac had hoped Beck would respect his decision and leave him alone. But Beck had never been one to give up easily. Isaac, wait. Isaac did not turn around or acknowledge that he'd heard Beck, and was unsurprised to hear a colorful string of profanity behind him. The woman pushing a stroller in Isaac's direction scowled. He swallowed his laughter. Some things never changed. Since Beck had always been the faster runner between them anyway, Isaac kept up his normal walking speed until Beck's hand clasped his wrist. Wait, you freaking son of a bee. Just curious, but how do you expect cursing me out to help your case? Isaac asked. Beck glared at him, chest heaving. He shook his head and ignored the question. Behind Beck, Isaac spotted Olivia hovering about 20 paces away, watching them anxiously. He felt a little better that someone was looking out for him and could step in if Beck's temper got the better of him again. You don't want to get back together then, okay? Beck said. He hadn't let go of Isaac's wrist yet, and his hand shook. But please don't shut me out again. We can just be friends if that's what you want. Well, there was an idea Isaac had never considered. Do you really think we can just be friends? They danced the line between platonic and romantic all their lives until they made it official. Always closer than other friends seemed to be. They'd shared a bed as kids until they physically couldn't fit in the same one, curled up under the same blanket on movie nights, held hands in crowds so they didn't lose each other. Honestly, it was hard to pin down when they had started dating. After their first kiss was when they talked and made it official, but it also felt like they'd been dating all their lives. Beck laughed, scratching the back of his head with his free hand. I don't know. I still want to try and win you back, but I'm willing to be friends if you are. I can't stand you not being part of my life. You're still the first person I want to talk to whenever I have news, or if I'm confused or something. These last 2 years have been really hard without you. Isaac looked down at his shoes. He knew exactly what Beck meant. How many times had something ridiculous happened at work, and he pulled out his phone to text Beck about it before remembering. How many times had he picked at that wound while he struggled to adjust to life without his best friend? I've missed you too, Isaac admitted. Beck squeezed his wrist. Then do you think we can try? Was it a mistake to let Beck back in his life? Would their relationship follow the same path they'd made as kids, until they inevitably started dating again? Was Isaac setting himself up for the same heartbreak that led to all this? He didn't know. That was the problem with relationships. No one knew what would happen in the future. But he had missed Beck. He missed going to his hometown and his old house. If he could stand being in the same room as Beck again, then he could visit his mom whenever he wanted. I still haven't forgiven you, Isaac warned. That's okay, Beck said. And this is strictly platonic. Right. Beck's eyes shined with hope while he waited for Isaac to agree. Isaac took a deep breath. Bad idea or not, he never had been able to deny Beck for long. Then okay, I guess. We'll try being friends again. Beck hooped and threw his arms around Isaac. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He shook Isaac so much the iced chai in his hand almost slipped. Okay, calm down, we're in public. Beck pulled back, a wide grin stretching his face. You won't regret this, I promise. Isaac wasn't as optimistic, but it was nice to see Beck grinning like that, all carefree and excited. So, I take it you worked everything out? Olivia asked, walking up beside them. We're going to be friends again, Beck said. Thank you for setting this all up. She smiled and sipped her latte. Told you asking to get back together was asking too much. Beck rolled his eyes. Yeah. Let a man dream, will you? Isaac snorted. I should have known someone else gave you that idea. Beck was stubborn to a fault. He would have kept asking to date again for years. Beck lightly shoved him. Now that Isaac had given permission for them to be friends, Beck was wasting no time acting like he always had. Hey, I might not be a childhood friend, but I've learned a few things about Isaac over the years, Olivia said. Guess I should be grateful, Beck allowed. Yes, you should, Olivia said. You should also know that if you hurt Isaac again, no one at the store would question your body in the freezer. Isaac choked on his spit. Olivia. Beck only grinned. Oh, I like her. Isaac looked from one to the other before shaking his head. This was going to be his life now, wasn't it? Hopefully he hadn't made a huge mistake. Chapter 26. The surprises keep coming. The complex Nick turned into had seen better days. Old brick buildings looked a few good hits from crumbling to pieces, and the bushes and gardens around them were overgrown and neglected. Nick had waved to a man in a guardhouse when they entered, and drove slowly down narrow, unmarked roads. You come here a lot? Sean asked. Yeah, once a week at least, Nick said. Like I said, I'm Tyler's main outside support.
Se han nadid.
And where are we exactly? You didn't see the sign blew away in the last big storm. We're at the Bennett Psychiatric Hospital. Sean's jaw dropped. Has Tyler been here this whole time? Tyler's big breakdown had been 16 years ago. He couldn't imagine being locked up in a psych ward for so long. Yep. He probably could have been released years ago, but Dad pays off the doctor so he can keep Tyler out of sight. Sean took a deep breath. And he'd thought his conservatorship was bad. At least Sean was allowed outside and could go where he wanted for the most part. He was just stuck with his father's credit cards and susceptible to the old man's whims. That seemed like nothing compared to this. Nick parked in front of a series of townhouse-looking buildings. These are called the cottages. They're the last stop for most patients before being released. They have the most independence here. It was better than Sean had expected, but his skin still crawled with discomfort as he followed Nick up the steps to the door and watched Nick knock. Knowing Tyler was in a psych hospital did make him more hesitant about being here, and he was begrudgingly grateful Nick hadn't mentioned it earlier. He didn't have time to overthink his visit and second-guess himself. The door opened to a tall middle-aged man in glasses. He revealed a toothy smile when he saw Nick. Hey, look who it is. Come on in, man. Hey, Roger, Nick said. He strolled inside, beckoning Sean to follow. Roger called out for Tyler. Sean was more hesitant. Nick had said this was the place for patients about to be released, but Sean didn't know what that meant in terms of their mental health. Should he act like everything was normal, or would someone try and talk to him about aliens or something? Looking around, it wasn't anything like the hospital ward he expected. There was a kitchen and living room and a door to a bathroom on the first floor. A few men were watching a game show in the living room, and Roger disappeared up the steps to where Sean assumed the bedrooms were. The normalcy put Sean at ease, and Nick introduced him to the few people milling about downstairs until Roger came back with Tyler in tow. Tyler's hair reached his shoulders and was dyed bright blue. He wore a plain black hoodie and jeans and fuzzy socks. Multiple piercings glinted in his ears and his nose. He was different than what Sean remembered, but he supposed 16 years would do that. Nick, what are you doing here on a weeknight? Tyler demanded, eyes sliding from the middle brother until finally landing on Sean. His mouth went slack and he paused on the last step.
Sean.
Nick grinned. Turns out our family sucks at communication. He never visited because we never told him where you were. His comment earned a few chuckles from the other men. Tyler stared at Sean for another moment. Hey Tyler. It's good to see you, Sean said. Good to see you too, little bro, Tyler said. He shook himself out of his daze. Come on up to my room, we can talk there. Catch up. Sure, Sean said, following both his brothers up the stairs. Tyler led them into a small room. Inside was a bed, desk, and a small table with an easel and paints on it. The open closet showed a stack of canvases. Tyler and Nick sat on the edge of the bed, leaving Sean the only chair in the room at the desk. So, what prompted you to finally ask after little ol' me? Tyler asked. Sean glanced at Nick before answering. I almost had a way out from Dad, but it fell through. I don't know how I'm supposed to keep going without hurting anyone. You're afraid you're heading to a breakdown like I did, Tyler summed up.
Se han nadid.
I haven't told him the specifics of your snap, Nick said. Thought you would like the honors. Tyler rolled his eyes and leaned back against his headboard. Years of a terrible life culminated in a model ripping my design, and I almost killed her. They put me here, and thanks to dear old Dad, I've never left. Sean furrowed his brows. Nick made it sound like there'd be a lot more details. The fact he almost killed a model was new information, and explained a lot about why the specifics of his breakdown were kept quiet. You were there for most of it, Tyler said. Or did you block out our childhood? I remember you always sewing, and getting mad when I interrupted you, Sean said. Tyler sighed. Yeah, Dad expected me to follow in his footsteps and take over the company one day. As a teenager, I was convinced that needed to happen immediately, and then he started spending all his time with you in your budding career. I took it as a sign of failure and pushed myself harder. Then Mom. He hesitated. None of them liked talking about their mother and why she wasn't around anymore. Mom died, and I threw myself into work even harder to distract myself. By the time that model popped some stitches on me, I was ready to break from any little thing. Being thrown in a psych ward for 16 years still sounded like an overreaction, but Sean worried bringing that up fell under the list of things Nick warned him about. My advice, Tyler started. If you're going to snap, run away where Dad can't find you first. He'll pay off whoever he has to in order to save his image. Sean didn't doubt him. He just wondered if there was a way to avoid snapping in the first place. Between Tyler's breakdown and their mother's depression, it felt inevitable in their family. I'm serious, Tyler said. He'll throw money around like confetti to get what he wants. I know, Sean said. I'm pretty sure he bribed the judge to force the conservatorship. It was the only way he could explain why it had been granted with such feeble reasoning. Tyler scoffed. Doesn't surprise me. He bribed our mother to marry him. Sean's mind came to a screeching halt. He did what?